Tommy Tran with you. Haley Sutton will be back here on the show momentarily, but let's talk quarterback battles to know before camp start in the NFL. We're predicting week 1 starters, and the Browns are on deck as they have a crowded room even without Deshaun Watson. Watson could see playing time at some point this season, but it could be a while as he recovers from an Achilles injury. Got our quarterback Danny Kanell on set. Mike Renner also joining us. They're going to give us who they think will be the opening week starters for teams like the Browns and a handful of others. So again, let me just sort of set the table if you're not in the know. Again, Deshaun Watson out, so you've got Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and then 2 draft picks in Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. So Danny, who will be the week 1 starter for Cleveland?
I'm going to go with the seasoned veteran of Joe Flacco.
The one with the Super Bowl ring.
Youthful, yes, the one with the Super Bowl ring, the one-time elite Joe Flacco, the 40-year-old Joe Flacco. I'm going to say he has the edge because the tendency for head coaches to normally go to is the guy that you feel the safest with, especially in a year when you feel like you need to kind of get things started on the right track. I know it's been a very interesting offseason, and Shedeur Sanders has consumed a lot of the headlines around the draft, and I think eventually it's a great opportunity for him. But when it's all said and done, I do think Joe Flacco will get the nod week 1. Now, is he starting week 17? I highly doubt it, but from the stability standpoint, coaches love who gives you the best chance to win. I think that's Joe Flacco.
I generally agree with the reasoning there, but I just disagree that Joe Flacco at this point in his career is the safe bet. I mean, he threw 7 picks in 6 starts a year ago. He did not look like a starting caliber quarterback anymore. He's now over 40 years old. I'm going with Dillon Gabriel. The guy is experienced, the most experienced quarterback to ever hit the NFL, more starts in college football than anyone in college football history. I do just think his game is ready for the NFL, even if his ceiling may not be that high. And I think if you're Cleveland and you're looking at this roster, kind of knowing your 3rd or 4th fiddle in the North, you got to have something to get the fans excited. Joe Flacco ain't getting the fans excited right now.
So before we move on, Danny, you mentioned Joe Flacco week 1, not sure week 17. So who is he gatekeeping it for? Who would then be in line to get the start? I'm guessing it's one of the younger guys?
No, I think Kenny Pickett has a real chance as well. That's why I think this quarterback room, you might see all 4. I mean, I don't think it would be a shock if at the end of the season we saw all 4 quarterbacks at least get a crack at the job.
Okay, Gabriel, by the way, 3rd round pick, Shedeur Sanders, 5th round pick for the Cleveland Browns. All right, let's get to the Colts here. They've got Daniel Jones and they've got Anthony Richardson. Mike, you like AR-15 in this shot here to be the week 1 starter for Indy.
He was the guy that was handpicked by Chris Ballard with that top 5 pick. And at this point in his career, with how little football he's played, they are going to give him every single opportunity to win this job, in my opinion. Like, he's the more physically gifted one. He's shown high-end flashes over the course of his career. With Daniel Jones, like, you know what you're going to get, and it's just not good enough to go where they want to go. It's not good enough to win you a Super Bowl, and it's just not good enough to get this fan base excited. And if you don't make the playoffs with Daniel Jones, your job is out the door if you're Chris Ballard. You may not be back there next year. Now, if you go down swinging with Anthony Richardson, you could still be back there. So I think that with Anthony Richardson, with the way this team is set up and how dynamic they are running the football, he can at least do that. So the only way I don't see him starting is if that shoulder really is an issue.
Mike, that was my big concern, and that's the reason I'm going with Daniel Jones, is we've already seen Anthony Richardson miss some key time this offseason, those integral reps that you get to try to develop continuity with the team. He's already had several battles with different injuries throughout his career, and I think Daniel Jones brings that stability. And I think Daniel Jones gets this opportunity, and the reason they signed him is because they realize that there's a chance Anthony Richardson could be a bust. And I know Chris Ballard, the implications that has for him, but again, who gives you the best chance to win? And I think Daniel Jones is already turning heads in that locker room. Guys like Jonathan Taylor, the running back, they realize what kind of an athlete he is. Don't undersell his ability to run the football a little bit. Clearly not the runner that Anthony Richardson is, but I do think he's going to get that job. I would be more emphatic, Tommy, to say by week 5 or 6 that Daniel Jones is the starter, but I'm going to go ahead and say he starts week 1 as well.
It's interesting. He obviously comes from that situation in New York, void of talent, which we'll get to the Giants in just a little bit. But the Colts have been knocking on the door in terms of the playoffs, and maybe they're just a quarterback away in terms of consistent play of getting there. All right, speaking of the Giants, they're also sort of a crowded room there with Dan Jones no longer there. You got Jackson Dart, of course, the young guy. You've got Jameis Winston, and then you've got Well, danger Russ, Danny. You're kind of laughing here, so
Yes.
Which way are you going? You're chuckling just a little bit
danger
on your old
Russ
team.
there. Yeah, I'm going to go with Russell Wilson. I think, again, from stability standpoint, from somebody who's still played, I know in Pittsburgh it didn't end up the way he wanted it to, but he still did beat out Justin Fields and was pretty good early on. The top end may not be there the way it used to be, but I still think he brings more stability than Jameis Winston. And Jackson Dart, I think this is the beauty of where the Giants selected Jackson Dart. He's not going to be facing pressure to get in the starting lineup because they traded back late first-round pick. You can really take your time with Jackson Dart, which I think the Giants should do. So if it comes down to Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, I think Jameis is a little bit too much of a wild card still with the football. I love him. Like, he's a great follow. He's funny. I think he's great for that quarterback room to be a mentor to Jackson Dart. But ultimately, I think it's Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Danny, and I agree with everything you said. And I'll add two more things. One, this Giants defense should be very, very good. So go with a guy who's not going to lose you games. I think Jackson Dart as a rookie, Jameis Winston over the course of his career have a propensity or could lose you games, whereas Russell Wilson isn't going to do that. And two, they got 2-4-3 wide receivers on the outside. They have real deal speed. And as much as Wilson has kind of regressed in certain areas, he still has a very pretty deep ball that's going to pair nicely with that wide receiver duo.
So let's take a look at the Giants' schedule, guys, because, again, if we focus on Jackson Dart and when he might play, Danny, when do you think there's a possibility that if some reason the vets struggle that we could see the young fella?
I think they wait as long as they can. I know people always look for the bye week. That is extremely late to make a potential change there. But I think as long as the Giants are competitive and they're still in that playoff hunt, which is kind of laughable when you think about the realistic chances of it, but as long as the locker room still feels like they're competitive. So I would say Russell Wilson gets the nod at least the first half of the season. Maybe that back end, you give him a couple games to kind of get his feet wet, get him some reps before next year when you sort of hand the reins to him, say, all right, this is your franchise. So I do think Jackson Dart ultimately gets to play, but I think it's probably towards the back end of the season, kind of like we saw with Michael Penix last year with the Falcons.
I'd actually go so far as say as I doubt he even gets to play. Like, the only way would be like a week 17, week 18. We're out of it already. 2 starts. But I think they might be a little bit more competitive than you're giving them credit for. I just see this defense being a much improved unit and able to get them with how easy their schedule could be outside of the East, that they could have a chance at still being competitive week 17 and 18.
Okay, so I was just sort of maybe setting it up as a necessity, but you guys are talking about maybe not needed there given what the team is projected to be like. All right, let's get to NOLA, where the Saints, because of Derek Carr's retirement, have opened the door for Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler, and Jake Haener. So younger vets, of course, but nothing like we're seeing, of course, in New York, Mike. So week 1, what's going to be the play here for the Saints, you think?
I think it's going to be Spencer Rattler. Truthfully, I had similar grades on him and Tyler Shuck when they came out, and obviously one goes in the 5th round, one goes in the 2nd round. But with Rattler, he's already had a year and numerous starts under his belt at the NFL level. Yeah, it's a different OC now, but he's very physically gifted, should be calmer this year. And there were just things that I saw from Tyler Shuck on his tape at Louisville. I know he's 26 years old, but still didn't strike me as like a super NFL-ready sort of guy. How he handled pressure, throwing wide receivers open in terms of anticipatory throws that I still think need work. So for all those reasons, I think Rattler probably is the safer bet to start week 1.
DK also going with Spencer Rattler, so let's move on to the Tennessee Titans, who had the #1 overall pick, Cam Ward. You also have a high pick, and Will Levis still on board here. So Cam Ward's job to lose week 1, DK?
Yeah, I think this might be the easiest one. I think this is Cam Ward's franchise now. It's the reason they took him with the #1 overall pick. And I think they're already clearly moving on from Will Levis and kind of figured out that experiment didn't work, but he's a pretty good backup option to have there. From everything you're hearing out of Cam Ward, the leadership role, the work ethic, showing up early to the building, the franchise loves him. And the reality is now, if you're the #1 overall pick, 15 years ago, it didn't matter. You might still get that year off, but you are expected. It'd almost be a disappointment if you're not the week 1 starter. I don't think there's going to be any disappointment at all. I think Cam Ward is the guy on week 1.
And Mike is also in agreement with Cam Ward for the Tennessee quarterback situation. So Mike Renner, Danny Kanell, guys, certainly appreciate it. I want to remind everybody about pushing the pile. Make sure to scan that QR code however you listen to your podcast. Make sure you also check them out on YouTube, Mike and Kyle Long.